you could have counted me, I think, in the camp, in the reappoint Elmendorf camp, which was a small and unpopular, I think, in conservative circles, camp. And I'm one of the people who would say that, if you didn't like the CBO's scores throughout the Obama era, and, we've seen a whole lot of written about the CBO scores on Obamacare, for example, and on the stimulus, then you have a problem with the rules of the game, not the game itself. Hate the player, not the game. Or don't hate the player, hate the game, right? And because I think, Elmendorf did a pretty solid job under the circumstances. Obviously, he was a Democratic appointee, but, no one really said he's violating any of the rules. He was just operating within the framework of what the CBO is supposed to do. And now the Republicans are saying, well, we need a new framework, and with that new framework, we need a new CBO director. So that's a little more, I think, excusable, but I still would have liked to see. I think it would have been a good opportunity for the new Republican Congress to say, we have had problems with the CBO, but we recognize that it's a structural problem, not a problem of its titular head.
Yeah, I think we'll see going forward who they appoint if the scores really change that much and to see how much of a difference it actually makes. My guess is that we're not going to see a huge difference in CBO scores, even if we have similar legislation put forward, because you also have most of CBO staff staying the same. It's not like you change the director and all of a sudden the director forces CBO staff to change their assumptions and put partisan scores out there. Right. These are economists who are career workers at the institution, and they're not just going to throw their economic credentials away because there's a new director. And if that's what Republicans are hoping for, because for appointing a new director, that I just don't see that ever possibly happening. If it did happen, you would probably see an exodus of CBO staff pretty quickly, and it would be readily apparent that this was just kind of a partisan rigging of the game.
That would be dangerous. But what I think your article was right on. I think the freak out over this is a little over the top, because I think some of the critics of what Republicans have been doing want to play their politicizing a nonpartisan process card a little too strongly. I asked, just an open question on Twitter at one point, if, appointing Doug Holtz-Eakin, if the Republicans reappointed Doug Holtz-Eakin to the CBO, would that be a quote-unquote politicization of the process? And some people said yes, when he is in fact a former CBO director. And he was actually in the, I think, reappoint Elmendorf camp himself. But, to a certain extent, and we've actually seen, I think, the previous two CBO directors go on to have relatively partisan jobs. Peter Orszag went to Obama's OMB, and Doug Holtz-Eakin runs I think a C3 or a C4, a policy shop here in D.C. that's generally center-right aligned. So we have seen, CBO directors themselves become involved in the partisan process in the past, but that hasn't, for any reason, politicized the CBO's nature or reputation. I guess we don't say, during Holtz-Eakin's tenure at the CBO, it was this relentlessly GOP partisan organization, or same on the other side with Orszag, even though it's kind of clear now that those heads were, generally members of the left or right coalitions in the United States.
Yeah, and I think a big reason for that is Holtz-Eakin, Orszag, anybody else involved with CBO has a great respect for the respect that other people have for CBO. I mean, these people, they don't want to go in and tarnish this nonpartisan institution, these scorekeepers that most people on both sides of the aisle in Washington have pretty good respect for. They really do think they try to put out honest estimates that really try to accurately score these different pieces of legislation. And who wants to be the person who goes in there and just throws that all away in a partisan move that is very, very apparent? It's just hard to imagine that Holtz-Eakin, Orszag, or anyone else would choose to do that.